I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, even the most rudimentary sense of life or death was left.
This is a Halloween 1978 hip-hop instrumental, the Ghost Grinder mix by the Ghost Grinder Nathan King on YouTube. Go check it out. It's been up since 2012. I've never even seen this. How could this be? This might be the new theme song from now on. What's up, everybody? It's B-Show Brian back for another edition of Horror Reanimated, and I'm going to turn my mic off because it's buzzing in my ear. All right, that's better. So, this week, and I can take off my headphones too. You may be watching this on YouTube, maybe the first or second time you've done this. Something new I've been trying to do is put these on YouTube. So I hope you'll enjoy them. But this week it's Horror Reanimated. Welcome back to the channel. Please subscribe and murder that notification bell, please. I need your help getting my numbers back up because people aren't seeing, and I don't mean just the world, subscribers, people that have subscribed to this channel are not seeing the videos because unfortunately I had to take some stuff down, and now unfortunately my number count I have to break through a certain barrier before people start seeing more videos, unfortunately. Thanks, YouTube. But this week, Horror Reanimated. I'm back. Talked to Anya Stanley last week as a little Halloween treat. We read the Halloween 4 script and then presented our thoughts and commentary, and it's really cool. So you can either check it out on bshowpodcast.com, the audio version, or you can also find the video version here on the YouTube channel. And thank you for those of you who have already. Actually, I think more people the first few days more people listen to the podcast or watch it on YouTube versus the Spreaker until the audio file caught up and got out there. But this week I wanted to do something interesting. I've often said that most people do podcasts and they just review movies. And if you want someone reviewing movies, there's tons of good podcasts out there. Texas Podcast Massacre, Necromaniacs, and hell, Break the Apocalypse for this week, episode 9. It's going to be free, the entire episode free to people over on patreon.com/breaktheapocalypse, or just follow us on Twitter at Break the App, and you'll find the links there. We talked about, John, and Sheen talked about our go-to Halloween horror movies that were not quite the most mainstream. So there's some really good episodes there, and it kind of jogged my memory for stuff I kind of want to do in the future. So go check it out. We threw out about 10 or 15 between the three of us, and a lot of them are very good movies, and a couple are pretty rare that even people in horror circles I don't think have seen, at least in the case of the ones me, John, and Sheen threw out. So this week I wanted to do something interesting. It's Halloween. Happy Halloween to you. By the time you hear this, it'll be probably the 30th, maybe the 31st, depending on when you're watching. But so I kick things around. I do so much stuff around Halloween and the Halloween franchise that is, and John Carpenter. Sometimes I don't know if it's overkill, and I want to give other franchises a try. In fact, the episode of Break the Apocalypse where we went through our go-to Halloween horror films, I wasn't allowed to pick anything from Halloween, Friday the 13th, Texas Chain, like none of the secular, huge, the big franchises in horror. I had to kind of dig deep. So that's kind of inspired me to do some other stuff, which I'm going to try to do. But I did want to cover Halloween specifically this month. And I know I'm late catching up. Some stuff didn't work out, obviously. But I wanted to consider, and I could put the Mrs. Elrod overlay. I might do that here, because this is technically not just Horror Reanimated. It's Mrs. Elrod's kitchen. Welcome. But I don't know who looks better, me or her. Sorry, Mrs. Elrod. But anyway, I'm losing my mind. Eccentricities of your horror movie podcaster. So thank you for hanging with me. I appreciate it. Mrs. Elrod's Kitchen there's probably going to be no differentiation for you. It's more mental for me. Is more me like proposing ideas as opposed to horror reanimated, where I really like rework concepts or go over unmade films. This is a combination of both. So I should have probably changed that graphic. But this week I wanted to talk about a Halloween sequel, not an unmade sequel, but just an alternate sequel, an alternate reality. Again, if you want a Halloween movie retrospective, go check anybody else out. This is more, I don't know, pitch room, fantasy, what ifs and stuff. That's what horror reanimated is. And then Mrs. Elrod's Kitchen is like proposing things to you and just kind of shooting the shit. So, what I was thinking of, and this is topical, because right now, as we record this, as we recorded Break the Apocalypse earlier, Philadelphia was pretty much rioting still. 2-3 days now. I don't want to make this political. I don't want to make this about what's going on in Philadelphia necessarily, specifically. But what I did want to do, because it inspired me, was I was thinking about Haddonfield. And I was thinking about I didn't understand why the sequels took place over 30 or 40 years, right? Especially when you start getting into like Halloween Resurrection. That's probably 22, 23 years after the original. 24. So my question was, if Michael Myers keeps coming back, if it's a haunted place, not only would people probably see the house as haunted and they stayed away from it, but eventually they would see the city that way. Because there were other, in the series, there was other cities or towns or communities around Haddonfield. There was a Russellville and, I don't know, there was a couple others. But I thought of this when I was reading the Halloween 4 script, is Haddonfield, Warren County, Hardin County, things like that. So there's other surrounding areas that don't seem to be subject to the goings-on of Halloween in the franchise. So thinking about that, I started thinking about how people treat the house. It's like, stay away from there, it's a spook's house, all that stuff. But why wouldn't people treat the town that way after a while? And I started thinking, with the riots, with the urban sprawl, John Draper from Break the Apocalypse, my co-host, he was talking to me offline about how he thinks that eventually, with all the rioting, with the looting and things like that these big corporations are just going to pull up their tent stakes and they're going to leave these big metropolitan cities. And I started thinking about Haddonfield under those circumstances, right? And started thinking about an alternate reality where, like, not only is Halloween banned, not only would Halloween be it would be bad for business, right? But Michael keeps coming back. They can't stop him. They don't know what's wrong. Thanks to the news and different media, the world knows about Michael Myers. The world knows about Haddonfield and what's going on. So why would anybody move there? But in every film, there's young families. There's people we didn't see in the first film. So, I mean, there's got to be somebody there. Why wouldn't Haddonfield have become a ghost town, literally? A ghost town, where only the memory of Michael Myers and some of the people who were unfortunate not to get out of the town before it collapsed were still there. Interesting to me. Let me know what you think. bshobrian@gmail.com. Or you can find me at bshobrian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So, thinking about that, let's take a step back and think about it for a second. Haddonfield, what would happen, first of all, if this all started to happen? Well, some of you may be familiar with what's called urban decay. It's when a big city starts to die off, businesses start to pull out, and then what happens is the people with the money move out of the city, and they move to the suburbs. This may sound familiar if you live near a big city, but move out to the suburbs. So the people with money, middle-class people, white-collar people, even tradesmen that have good livings, they move out of the city into the suburbs or into the country. So then what you have is some corporations, some businesses in the city, but you have a lot of lower income, a lot of poverty-stricken people who end up being trapped in the city. There's the only people who are there. So looking at that, and I mean, think of it, it's not this drastic, but like Escape from New York, right? Crime is up 112% or 1,000%. People have moved out of the city. There's no businesses there, and then the city dies, and only criminals are trapped. I'm not saying people in urban areas are criminals. What I'm saying is a similar concept where over time there's a lot of cities that have imploded, and look at Detroit. I live just about an hour from Detroit. Detroit's the same way. There's still people that live downtown where it's gentrified, and that's a whole other story. But there's still people that live downtown. It's just a lot of businesses, a lot of commuters, a lot of yuppies that may live in the higher end apartments. But then you've got a lot of crime. You've got a lot of people on the poverty line who live in and around the inner city. So I think of that on a smaller scale for Haddonfield. Because let's kind of peel back the onion on Haddonfield here. Haddonfield was an agricultural city. It was a rural city. It's like a small town outside, like we have them in Ohio. If you take like 2 hours outside of Toledo, you have these little towns that pop up, and they're farming towns. And there's some businesses or a college or whatever the case may be, but they're not your big cities. They're not even your mid-sized cities like Toledo or Indianapolis, with I think Indianapolis being bigger than Toledo. But point being, you have these small communities, which still exist very much so today. It's very closely held. I live in a very small version of one that happens to be right close to Toledo, a mid-sized city. So my situation is a little different. But taking things into consideration, you could only have your local Lions Club and your Mason's Lodge and your Elks Lodge trying to keep the city together for so long. And if you don't want to go so drastic, what you could do is, instead of the whole city being gone, you could even do a concept where, I'm picturing a concept, where that part of town is the bad part of town. So where these murders have happened, because in the film they're all in the same general area. So maybe in Haddonfield, let me see if I can pull up a map. There used to be a map of Haddonfield that someone on the old Halloween message board came up with. Map of Haddonfield. Not New Jersey. No one likes New Jersey. Sorry. For those of you who live in New Jersey, I apologize. It's just a thing. I'm sure New Jersey's fine. Let's see. Where are we at? Fictional Haddonfield map? It's not what I'm looking for. Oh, here we go. There it is. coffinhop.com. Yeah, I've seen this before. So Haddonfield, if I'm looking at this correctly, 17th Scottsville Bypass Highway. Okay, so the area where the murders happened in the original film is up in the upper northwest portion of the city, according to this map. I'm going based off of this random map that someone made up and put on the internet. So most of the murders took place upper northwest. They're all kind of scattered, I guess. Power plant, mall. Yeah, they have it numbered with like different things that go along with it. But it's modeled after the West Hollywood neighborhood that the film was shot in. Yeah, I can't find a really good one. That was pretty much it. Okay, here's another one. Let me pull this one up as you guys leave in droves from Pinterest. Okay. So there we go. So if I look at this fictional map, because someone actually laid out the streets, the hospital, the college, and all that stuff, it's not really accurate because of the scale of what they said things were in the first two films. But if I'm looking at this fictional map, this doesn't really exist, and trying to apply logic, if you look at the streets, the way this is laid out, so just using this as an idea, okay, so it's this doesn't make sense. So it looks like the murders happened on this map. Yeah, so, okay, I'm spending way too much time getting lost in this fictional map here. But the point is, there's certain parts of town, even small towns, that people lose interest in going to, or people think is haunted, or there's a bad part of town that's crime-ridden. So even if that's the case, Haddonfield would likely turn into that because of the issues that they've had. Because who is going to move there? Who's going to be able to sell their home? So using that logic, I'm thinking about, like, okay, if you've got people that won't sell their homes, it's almost like, like the parents of Ray Finkel from Ace Ventura Pet Detective thing going on, or the older community. But what I'm thinking is tied to what's going on right now. Like, what if, because the thing I'm getting to here is, if Haddonfield, or at least the part of Haddonfield where Michael comes back to his home, if instead of it being this middle-class neighborhood in this small farming community, agricultural, rural town, if instead the people who have money move out of that section into other sections, or the suburbs, or develop elsewhere, how would we feel about Michael? Would it be different? How would we feel about Michael coming back to a crime-ridden area? See, because now that takes it kind of into the territory of like Candyman, right? Because the story of Candyman was originally that in Cabrini Green. I can't fucking talk. I've been talking all day, past 2 days. The Cabrini Green projects in Chicago, Illinois, was where Candyman was first released, I guess. That's where everything kind of began in the first movie. So Michael would kind of not be a folk hero like that, but a specter, a boogeyman that either comes back or still resides in that area. In fact, it would almost be, it could almost be more sympathetic, because by like the second or the fourth or the fifth movie, sixth movie, like Michael comes back and he's killing people, and you almost don't feel sorry for him, just a little bit. But you almost don't feel sorry for him, because it's like, are you fucking stupid? Like, why would you keep moving back? It's like the Elm Street kids. Like, why did any of the Elm Street kids still live in the town? Why did the parents still live there after the first or second time he came back? It's stupid. Why would you do that? The deaths are on you at that point if you don't leave. But the point being, it like adds a whole new dimension now. Because if you think about it, Michael is almost, I guess you could say in some circles, you could look at Michael. Sorry, I need fidget stuff. You can almost look at Michael as, in a way, especially with the folklore of the holiday and how they went into it with part 6 or part 3, the novelization of part 1, Michael is almost like a reckoning. Michael's almost a force of nature, making you come to grips with your fate. And in some ways, the sins of the father and all this stuff, because of the family ties. So there's all those different themes in those films, in that series, in that franchise. But in this case, it would be different, because you would have people who not that they chose to be there, but that they had no other choice. That was it for them. They weren't going anywhere. So, in this case, Michael is coming back, and these people are almost forced again, part of fate. But then you ask the question, like, why would it be these people's fate? And it comes back to that whole argument that we're in with the haves versus the have-nots and people with money and privilege and things like that. So, like, now the question is, what did these people do to deserve that? It's a universal thing. Because really, what did Lori do to deserve her fate? Nothing. She was a nice girl. She was a smart kid. She stayed out of trouble for the most part. She was getting ready to graduate, go to college, have kids or not. Do whatever she wanted to. She was a smart, resourceful kid. The other kids were just being goofy teenagers having fun and having sex and smoking pot and drinking and doing things that kids will do as they experiment. They really didn't do anything to deserve the fate that they got. So much in the sense of that way, what did these other people do to deserve their fate? Michael Myers coming back. The area of town's already crime-ridden. Now it's depressed. You can't move. You can't sell your house. Because there's people in my city, in Toledo, that are like that. They lived in a certain neighborhood. They didn't want to leave because they were raising their kids there or they grew up there and they had certain pride. And now they can't leave because their home prices are so depressed. It happened to my grandpa. The home prices are so low that you take a loss to just walk away from it. And if you're someone who doesn't have money, you can't afford to buy a new house. If you got a family, you're going to have to go rent somewhere else. And can you afford high rent in Haddonfield? Probably not. And can you afford to just pack up your kids and leave? Probably not. You're disrupting their entire life. So it's kind of interesting to think about that in terms of fate, like some of the stuff in the rest of the series. And then you start thinking about the rest of the cast of characters, like who's Michael going to run up against, right? There's probably going to be gang members, people selling drugs, but there's also going to be good people, because it's not just lower income doesn't just mean crime. That would be if you transplant an inner city neighborhood from one town to another, you're going to get a lot of that. But then you think about this, first, let's stick with that, right? If Michael's killing gang members and he's killing drug dealers and things like that, is he cleaning up the streets? So is he a hero? And I'm sure a lot of the gang members aren't necessarily bad kids. Maybe they're kids that just didn't have a place to go. And that's another big thing with the 80s, with movies, is Lost Boys, things like, I'm trying to think of other movies. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles even did it in 1990. It was films reflecting that gang culture of the 80s and 90s, of this lost generation of young men. And no one talks about that anymore. We talk about the plight of the woman, and it's fair game. We talk about sexual harassment and certain things. But one thing that we still don't talk about is gang culture. And women are affected, but I know when I was growing up, it was more so boys. And again, not that you go over the top and you talk about that, and it's not on your face, but like throughout the film, you're kind of emotionally dealing with these things under the surface. But I think that's what fascinated me about this topic, and why I kept wanting to talk about it, but I was kind of waiting for the right time. And that was as good as any. Philadelphia's being looted, and they're rioting again. So I don't know, when I think of shop owners and people that are running businesses and people who are stuck in that neighborhood and, families, it seems a little more tragic with Michael being there. And then, how about this too? Like, there's certain neighborhoods that maybe the police don't go into because they're war zones. So maybe there's a certain street or two. And again, Haddonfield was such a small town in the franchise that maybe this didn't apply. But like, I think of New York, There's so many streets in New York where there's just gang territory. It's not safe for people to go. So what if there are people in the inner city and they're calling police because Michael Myers is here? He's killing people. First of all, they're not going to believe him. Second of all, maybe they will if he's coming back enough. But the second point I was going to make is that, will the police respond? We're talking about defund the police, back the blue, Black Lives Matter. And not to make this the Black Lives Matter Halloween, but my point is just looking at it from a different lens and putting it in a different spin. Because I was listening to Cinema, Cynema, the podcast by Harrison Smith. And one of the things he always talks about with cinema, being cynical cinema, is most sequels are just cash grabs. And a lot of them don't bring anything new to the table. A lot of them don't tread any new ground. And most of them, the most important thing, and one of the most important things, is they don't find a way to make the story, the franchise, the characters relevant. So what they're doing is just retreading. So what I was thinking of is how to make Halloween relevant again. How to tell that story in an environment that, and maybe I'm missing the point, and I know I'm looking at a very simplistic view of relevancy. But on its surface, I look at what's going on right now and I apply that to horror movies. You couldn't do it with Friday the 13th because that's out in the middle of the woods. You could do it with Elm Street. That Freddy would have a whole new crop of kids to prey on. Or he's preyed on them so much that the town is a shell of itself and it's a war zone, crime-ridden. I don't know. But Halloween just seemed that much more topical to me. Candyman is the opposite, and I think I want to save... I'll tell you the idea. Candyman was the opposite of this. I was thinking of Michael Myers in not an urban neighborhood necessarily, but like I said, a broken city. And I was thinking of Candyman in a gentrified neighborhood. And that completely changes things, and I'll talk about that another time. I wanted to do about a half hour tonight and do a show for Halloween. But I did an extra long one with Anya last week, and honestly, I feel like with everything I've been doing with the other show, I think doing a couple of these a month will be good. And if I keep them short, I'll be able to do a couple a week maybe. So we'll see. I'm starting to get the hang of this multiple podcast shit. So if you like what I'm doing, then it's going to be good for you. I might even add some wrestling stuff too if people are into that. Hit me up. But I'm trying to think, what would you have? I'm trying to think of who I would cast as like a Black Loomis. Not that I want to be that simplistic. I think Lawrence Fishburne would be amazing. It doesn't have to be a doctor, but maybe some kind of community leader. Even if he's a priest. Ooh, good versus evil. Or a deacon. Lawrence Fishburne as the deacon of the church, the Baptist church or Methodist church or whatever. It could be Catholic. But a trusted community leader. Because in this case, and I guess that makes sense, just that intuitive, sometimes you get a gut feeling, and I think that makes more sense in this case because Loomis was an outsider. Loomis was from the system. Loomis was a doctor. And he was a trusted authority figure, but even the police didn't believe him at first. Ooh, sorry guys. At first, the police didn't believe him. And in this case, if you're talking about, the story is more about the community and the people that are there, then it would make sense to have a trusted community leader in that Loomis type role, that Van Helsing type role, fighting against Michael Myers. And I think Lawrence Fishburne. He might be a little old for it now to be physical. Again, Loomis wasn't. Plus, with that, you're getting the good versus evil thing because Michael is evil. And now you literally have a priest who's fighting against it. God, I like that idea now. I really like that. So let's set the scene before I head out of here. We have a fallen Haddonfield. The rich have, in a way, enjoyed the land, taken what they can, then they've abandoned it when things got bad, leaving people who were on the poverty line and unable to leave the situation stuck there. And when Michael returns to find a different Haddonfield, you have a deeper sympathy in a way built into the victims. But you also have certain people in the community that are downtrodden and underdogs, natural underdogs. This isn't, and I think that's the other thing too, is looking at the original Halloween. In this era, I mean, it's suburban people, it's white people problems, it's, you know, and looking at stuff in the news, I mean, the Patrice O'Neill bit about Natalie Holloway, right? White girl gets kidnapped. We talk about her for like 11 days in a row. Black girls go missing all the time. No one gives a shit, right? So in this case, it's like, yeah, we know there's white people get killed every day. There's white serial killers all the time. But this case would be different because now Michael's back, but he's in a predominantly crime-ridden neighborhood. They could be white, but statistically, they're not going to be. And you could even mention that in the film is maybe it's the irony of there were people who moved out of the city into a town like Haddonfield, and then everything fell apart. Again, I think it'd be logistically, now that I think about it, hard to transplant an entire neighborhood that is completely different from what Haddonfield was. So I want to walk that back a little bit and say it's probably not going to be a predominantly black community. But statistically, if it is underprivileged or if it is on the poverty line, there's statistically more black people that are affected by poverty than white people. So I want to get my numbers straight before I commit to that one. Yeah, poverty rates by race and ethnicity. Yeah, in the United States, 21% of the poverty of the poor are black, 17% Hispanic, 24% American Indian, Native Alaskan, 9% white. So yeah, I'm not saying that all black people are poor. What I'm saying is more black families are unfortunately affected by poverty than white families. So, like I said, logistically, it'd be weird to have like this all-white community and then 20 years later, it's just all black people. But again, I'm trying to think. Denzel Washington would be too on the nose. That'd be a little too obvious. He's a little too famous. He's been in too many movies. But yeah, I think Lawrence Fishburne would be a great choice. Because again, he's an older guy, but he's an older guy, decent size, great look, and I think believable in that role. Let's see. Because there's got to be an action type of guy, and I loved him in The Matrix. So yeah, Lawrence Fishburne as a priest, an aging priest, and maybe he's lost his faith. Maybe he's lost his faith. He's seen what happened around him. He's seen the community. Or maybe he's transferred in and he has no idea what he's in for. and he's heard stories. But he's transferred in from the church, maybe it's a Catholic priest, transferred into Haddonfield, this assignment that nobody wants. And of course, now he's there. It's a rough neighborhood that he's trying to help out and fix and rehab. So maybe that's his thing. Maybe he's a fixer. And he has to rally the community against this Michael Myers, this specter. It's, I don't know, interesting. I don't know. What do you guys think? Hit me up, bshowbrian@gmail.com. You can reach me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at bshowbrian. What do you think about an alternate Haddonfield that has fallen and Michael Myers comes back? I don't know. Again, I think it'd be a completely different spin. You could deal with topical things without being on the nose. You could be subtle. You could have subtext. And it wouldn't be so obvious. So what do you guys think, though? Let me know. Thank you for checking me out. Remember, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the notification bell. Just murder it, or I'm going to jump from a bell tower myself. And if you're listening on iTunes, Spreaker, you can listen to this show if you like the audio version anywhere you find podcasts. But make sure you subscribe. I'm going to be putting more episodes up more regularly again. So my name is B. Show Brian. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Happy Halloween, and